So this is a herd immunity simulator that I coded together using different technologies for coding it, and it's supposed to simulate mathematically and a little bit with a little bit of physics how herd immunity works. And you can read the instructions here, the assumptions that it makes about it being a closed system, which the population is not. How people gather, as we know, people who are alike gather together. So anti-vaccine or vaccine hesitant people will be more clustered together than the general public, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So one of the things that I did was I set it up with measles, and let's just assume that it's an R naught of 12, although as high as 18 has been recorded in some epidemics. Starting with a population size of 1,000, and so the percent vaccinated would be above the threshold for the herd immunity. The herd immunity would be 1 minus 1 over 12. So let's just keep it at 95. It begins with one infection. Vaccine is highly effective, and we have the infectious period, infectious time, and infection to infectious time, and the infectious period as well. And I'm going to start the simulation here. And what I'm going to show you is how one case with herd immunity, one case affects this population of 1,000. So our case of measles is this red dot that you see floating around in the center now, moving down into the left. It is touching the gray unvaccinated dots. The blue are vaccinated but not immune people, and then the red the other reds are the other people who are infected, and they go on to be infectious. Each second is 1 day, and so they become infectious at second number 8. And so as you see here, they're floating around and causing some cases, and just you just have this going. The simulation will stop either when everybody's infected and recovers, and so they turn green, or when there are no more red dots in the simulation. So here we are several days in. We're 50 days in from the first case, and you can see how this epidemic continues. And remember, if 1,000 were vaccinated, so that leaves a vaccination coverage, percent vaccinated 5%. 5% of that 50 would be unvaccinated, and then an additional 2% from the effectiveness of the vaccine. So about 70 people, and you see the numbers here: vaccinated and immune, and vaccinated not immune. So it looks like the epidemic is ending, the red dots are disappearing, and the epidemic is about to end here in a few seconds or a few days in this model. And so now you have it about finished. And I decided to end the model, the simulation, 2 incubation periods after the last case. So here is the epidemic curve. You have the first wave, the second wave of cases, and then you had this. So of those who were vaccinated and immune, of course, all of them fought off the infection. Vaccinated but not immune, all of them, we went from 19 to 0, so all the not immune. And then vaccinated, unvaccinated, almost all of them became infected. There was one who was not infected. So one gray dot in there somewhere, if I can find. Oh, yes, here it is. No, I just saw it. There's a gray dot in here somewhere. So that is a person who was not vaccinated but survived the epidemic. So um, so that's beyond the herd immunity threshold. So what happens when it drops to as low as 90%? And so we keep everything the same, and we start the simulation with 90%. So remember, after 102 days, you had almost everybody who was not immune become sick, all but one. And so now we're going to drop the percent vaccinated. So we're putting 100 people at risk plus an additional 2% at risk. And so we start that simulation. And so you have more blues because less the vaccinated but not immune, and you have way more grays bouncing around in there. So immediately we have 2 and 3, now 3 cases floating around, and now 4, 5. You see the red dots, and I apologize if it's too fast, but we were trying to model the physics of randomness, and for that we needed the speed. And so here, the epidemic is quickly accelerated at 30 days. You have a lot of reds floating around now. In future iterations, I'm going to have a counter to show how many people are sick at that given moment. Um, and some other little improvements here and there. But it takes time to code all of this. And so now you have a major epidemic, as you can see, lots of reds floating around. So basically, every gray and every blue will be infected. And now the epidemic is winding down as all the susceptibles have been infected and are recovering into green. Another thing that I might add later on is to actually model deaths, but it's just not large enough of a number. With 1,000 cases, the chances are good you'll have one death. And as we saw with Texas, with only 200 cases, you had one death. So this is about to end very quickly because it ran out of susceptibles. So yes, generally epidemics, when there's a lot of susceptibles, go quickly because you infect everybody very fast. So here now the epidemic curve is much more significant, much more pronounced, and the attack rates also change. And everybody who was not immune, vaccinated but not immune, got sick, and everybody who was not vaccinated also got sick. So none of the non-immune people survived this epidemic, and everybody recovered eventually. But you can see the change of 5%, what that does to this. And I hope I don't have to show it, but if you have 14% as that school in Texas so proudly proclaimed, 14%, you start the simulation, there's a lot of grays. And this epidemic will be over very quickly, but it will take out everybody, as you can see, because even among those who are vaccinated, the blue dots, they're going to be coming into contact with all the reds, and then you can see how quickly this has now exploded. We are only 22 days in, 3 weeks into the epidemic, and it has now gone completely out of control. So this school would face a nightmare scenario of hundreds of children sick at the same time. And those who are vaccinated, they're fine, but I'm sure some of them will be affected in some way by school closures or school their friends being affected, etc. And so now, 50 days in, the epidemic ends, and we will see the results here in a few seconds. Again, 2 incubation periods after the last case. That's when the simulation stops. So 67 days, and this is the epidemic curve. Very nicely modeled, propagated epidemic as expected. And that's the mathematical model that I have. I have all the code available for people to check out, for people to see that this is not manipulated in any way other than what we know about these infectious diseases is put into the modeling, and then the physics of the dots floating around and the randomness that we try to apply to this. But as we know, there's not really randomness in the world. The world is a little more deterministic than this. And so this is what I have, and I wanted to share with you. Open for any comments. Thank you.